Is it sacrilege that I'm drinking McDonald's coffee as a Canadian instead of Tim Hortons? I don't know. Now, before you guys get mad at me for leaving the house, just know for the whole way that I didn't even leave the car. I went through the drive-thru for this thing. I just couldn't take being inside anymore, even if I were to go outside just to get a coffee. Even though I'm in the car for the whole time, I needed to get out of the house. So forgive me for getting this coffee, but I think that I did it pretty safely and the least amount of human contact possible. Now, while we're on the topic of McDonald's coffee, as you guys can tell by the title of this video, today we're talking about McDonald's in Watch This Stock. Here we go. And now I'm sure some of you have seen the movie The Founder, which I'll put up a poster of it right here. And it's a great movie if you haven't watched it. It's all about how McDonald's, the company, was founded. So in one scene, the then CEO of McDonald's, Ray Kroc, asked a bunch of Harvard or Yale students, I can't remember, they asked them, how do you think McDonald's generates their profits? And a lot of the students, they were like, this is a joke, right? You guys flip burgers. And Ray Kroc says, you're wrong. McDonald's is actually a real estate company, which actually kind of makes sense if you think about it, because McDonald's, they just go into different cities and then they buy up all the real estate properties in the prime locations, and then they build a McDonald's on top of it. And then they use franchisees to franchise out the store. So a lot of the profits that McDonald's make from the stores, they actually go to the franchisees. And McDonald's just enjoys the appreciation of the value of the land that they just bought, or the real estate holdings that they have. But if you want to think about it from the flip side, I guess the students do have a point in saying that they do prepare food for a living, because the value of their real estate holdings is just dependent on how many people go to their stores, right? So if McDonald's food sucks and no one wants to eat McDonald's anymore, then the value of the real estate holdings would depreciate as well. So I think it's a double-edged sword. You can kind of think of it as a real estate business and a food business. But anyways, the reason why I'm talking about McDonald's today and why I think you should watch this stock, it's because it's a very interesting business model. So as I mentioned, they got the real estate portion, and I just think that the food that they sell is something that appeals to so many different people, right? So this might be kind of anecdotal, but every time I go to McDonald's, it's completely full. And this was, of course, before the quarantine. So before the quarantine, I used to go to McDonald's all the time, either just by myself or with my family or with friends. And every single McDonald's that I go to at pretty much every single hour of the day, it's always packed, right? So sometimes I would go at like 2 a.m. and a lot of people, they come back from parties or they just come back from the bar and they need something to eat and they just go to McDonald's, right? They don't go anywhere else because one, McDonald's is the only place that's open at that time, and two, McDonald's is such a good food to eat when you're drunk, right? So speaking from firsthand experience here. So I think McDonald's business is just really strong. And despite the whole quarantine thing, their drive-thrus are still open. So if you look at the statistics, about 70% of McDonald's income actually comes from the drive-thru as opposed to walking in and people ordering. Of course, this data is from the United States, but it might vary worldwide. But if you think about it, it wouldn't vary too much worldwide. So even if the numbers are a little different in other countries, the USA is where McDonald's main business is and where they generate the majority of their income. And at least in the USA, 70% of their income comes from the drive-thru. And if you just ask anyone who's worked in, let's say, the fast food or service industry, they would tell you how busy the drive-thru is compared to just people walking in and ordering. So after this whole quarantine thing and after the lockdown, you can't walk in and order McDonald's anymore, but you can still drive through. And every time I go to the drive-thru just to order this coffee today, for example, that was super packed. And this was just like a random Monday. And so I think in the long term, McDonald's business is really sound. And if you want to pick a stock that's recession proof, McDonald's could be an interesting pick. Now, this is not to say that they're not affected by the shutdown at all. And according to the latest report, their same store comp sales are down 22% from March of last year, which is a significant decline. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, 70% of their sales are from drive-through. And let's just say that that's a similar amount compared to what they were doing last year compared to now. If they completely cut away the dine-in and the walk-in service, you would experience probably a 20 to 30% sales drop. So McDonald's is definitely suffering on that front. And another thing that might be a con against investing in McDonald's is the balance sheet could be a little unnerving when you first look at it. So from first impressions, it looks like they don't have that much cash for a company of its size compared to a lot of debt. So they actually have less than $1 billion in cash according to their latest financials. And they also have just a ton of debt compared to the amount of cash. But as we said earlier, if you believe that McDonald's is a real estate business, this isn't exactly rare in the real estate world. So often in the real estate world, you will see that the long-term debts are a huge amount compared to the amount of cash. And that's because when you're a real estate business, you got these like long-term leases or mortgages or just long-term debts that you have to pay back. That's usually a really large amount compared to the cash that you currently have. But they're generally at lower interest rates. So I wouldn't worry too much about the balance sheet of McDonald's just because also, as I mentioned earlier, their business is still in operations, right? So it's not like an airline or cruise line where it's just completely shut down or you lose like 90% of your sales. McDonald's is a business that still has probably at least 50, 60, or 70% of their sales are still intact because they've been deemed an essential business. And expanding on the essential business part, Ontario just announced a new wave of businesses that need to be shut down because they're no longer deemed essential. And you'll be surprised at some of the lists because Ontario is being pretty strict now. So a lot of the MJ business, so I'm using code words here because there are some words on YouTube I can't say, but you know what MJ stands for, right? Those, the Michael Jackson, as Jeremy likes to put it, those Michael Jackson stocks, those MJ businesses are completely shut down just because they're no longer deemed essential. But McDonald's, since they serve food, that's deemed essential. And you know what? I think that's another piece of evidence that McDonald's business model is really strong. You know, when you look on the news, you see all this doom and gloom, but McDonald's is still open. If they ever close down McDonald's, I think that the end of the world might be near. But so far, McDonald's is still open and we're still good. And I think Wall Street kind of realizes this because if you look at McDonald's stock, it's bounced back quite a bit from its lows back in late March. And I think that there's good reason for that is because McDonald's is such a recession-proof stock, right? So people are always going to go to McDonald's no matter the prevailing economic conditions. It's not like it's a steakhouse or something where, you know, if people drop $100, $200 on like a dinner, they might not want to go to that restaurant in a recession. But for something like a McDonald's, I feel like people will always go to McDonald's even if there is a recession. Heck, people might go to McDonald's even more when there's a recession because they got cheap food. So the question now becomes, am I going to buy McDonald's stock? I think this one's an interesting one to watch, but at these prices, I don't feel compelled to just be like, oh, I have to buy this stock. I just absolutely have to own it. But, I think it could be interesting if the prices go back, especially to where they were back in late March. I think this could be an interesting play. Now, keep in mind, McDonald's is normally a business that generates over $1 billion of free cash flow per quarter. Now, I know they're probably not going to hit those numbers this quarter or next quarter or anytime soon just because of the whole outbreak situation. But I think that once the business recovers, and it probably will, once the business recovers back to its normal levels, back in 2019 levels, I think that it could return to generating $1 billion in free cash flow very easily. And I think that this is definitely an interesting business to watch. And overall, I know a lot of people give McDonald's flack for serving unhealthy food. What I have to say to that is, blame the user, don't blame the product, right? So no one's forcing you to eat McDonald's. For people like me, I do see a lot of value in something like a McDonald's. For me to just be able to grab a coffee or just grab a bite to eat when I'm on the go, when I don't feel like cooking or when I just really need something to eat. So overall, I really like the business of McDonald's. So yeah, with that being said, this will be an interesting stock to watch, and make sure you add this to your watch list if you haven't already. So yeah, I promise these videos will be short and sweet, so I'm going to leave it here. Don't forget to give this video a like if you enjoyed the video, and consider subscribing if you like this series. Be sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram. I'll leave the links down below in the description. With that being said, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.